Thank you for being a part of today's study in the book of James. As I consider the conflict that seems to be a daily part of life in 2020, I can identify with the psalm writer who wanted to escape what was going on. He wrote, "And I say, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. Yes, I would wander far away. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would hurry to find a shelter from the raging wind and tempest." Psalm 55, 6 through 8. Since we don't have the wings of a dove, we have to find God's way to deal with the raging tempest that swirls around us. As we think about conflict, whether it's within our own inner selves, our households, our workplaces, or in the world, the book of James has insights for us. James chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your own passions. Selfish pleasures that are in conflict within every person are the source of every quarrel and fight. My friends who are working the program of Alcoholics Anonymous frequently tell me that being self-centered is one of the major causes of their addiction. Let's look at the AA literature for a moment to get some insight into conflict that comes from the oppressive need to please ourselves. Have you ever thought, if the rest of the world would only behave, fill in the blank, I wouldn't have to be like a dove and fly away from the tempest of today? The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous asks the above question and gives an answer to it. It says, whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation. But we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self which later placed us in a position to be hurt. That's in the Big Book of AA. People who work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous are encouraged to have a daily meditation. All of us would do well to meditate on today's passage in James and the AA thoughts that are contained in this article. We could ask ourselves these questions. How does the oppressive desire to always get my own way cause me to be in conflict with myself and others? Which is it? Fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, or self-pity that primarily raises the tempest in my inner self, spilling over to my relations with others? What decisions have I made in the past that have placed me in a position to be hurt and to hurt others? People who use a program of Alcoholics Anonymous realize that they must be honest with themselves. This is true of everyone who wants to gain victory over their own selfish desires. Once again, the Big Book has excellent insight at this point. Quote, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. Again, the Big Book. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We have to have God's help. That's, again, Big Book of AA, page 62. Jesus said, for whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. Mark chapter 8, verse 35. How many of us are losing our lives, our inner peace, family, joy, positive work relations, and more, because we're continually attempting to save our own selfish life. AA learned well from Jesus that the answer is in losing ourselves in something bigger than our own selfish pleasures. The book of Mark is called a gospel because it is a good news book. The good news is that God is ready to help us gain victory over our self-centered lives. The writers of the Big Book explain how they accomplished getting free from a lifestyle that's consumed with self-pleasure and self-seeking. Again, I quote, "This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is our principal. We are His agents. He is the Father, and we are His children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we passed to freedom." Well, if you're like me, you are tired of the inner conflict and trouble with other people and yourself as you try to serve yourself and please yourself. So you might try praying like this. "Dear God, I am tired of being an actor. I'm tired of being the director and the stage manager of my life. I surrender all those roles to you, and I accept you as the director. Please arrange the setting of my life however you best see fit. God, I like to think that I'm the boss of my life, and I know exactly what I want and what I need. I surrender my right to be right to you. You are the boss, and I work for you. God, I am like a little child that is self-centered and easily deceived. I surrender to you, loving and powerful Father, because you know what is best for me. Amen." I encourage you to pray this prayer or something similar to it. I believe God will answer this kind of praying. After all, James wrote, "You do not have because you do not ask." James chapter 4, verse 2. This kind of prayer that I just mentioned to you is not the self-seeking and willful prayer that James discourages. God will respond to this prayer, and He will help you conquer the obsession to always have your own way. A byproduct of getting free from a self-centered lifestyle will be less inner conflict and less conflict with the people around you. I pray that God blesses you as you study these passages and meditate on them, and you talk to God about it. Have a wonderful day.